Washington, D.C. Attorney General is accusing a landlord of taking advantage of the Section 8 system by renting only to voucher holders. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. All right, so I have an interesting article for you today, and it's coming out of Washington, D.C. Now, normally when I talk about Section 8, I'm talking about how landlords don't want to deal with it because, simply put, it is too much trouble. Maybe they're not getting enough money for the rentals to cover their costs. They don't want to jump through all the bureaucratic hoops like inspections, right? But in this case, it's a little bit different. Now, a government is accusing a landlord of only wanting to rent to Section 8 tenants. And why are they saying that a landlord would only want to rent to a Section 8 tenants? Because they claim, right, and this is claim, that the city pays overly high rates for rent, and the landlord noticed this and decided, hey, we only want Section 8 tenants up in our building because then we'll be getting over market rate rents. Now, I don't see the problem with this. I don't see the problem with this at all. If somebody is paying rates that are too high, that's not the fault of the landlord. That's the fault of the city, okay? And they beg, simply put, they are begging landlords to take Section 8 tenants. So what is the problem with a landlord saying, hey, we're only going to take Section 8 tenants? Now, if they're rejecting the other tenants, I don't see a problem with that. I really don't. I feel like the landlord should be the one who ultimately decides who they want to rent to and who they don't want to rent to. If the landlord says, hey, I want to work with the government, I want to rent to as many Section 8 people as possible, and I'm going to give special preference to them to be up in my units, then they should be happy. But here's the problem with government, right? They're never happy, no matter what you do. If you don't want to rent to Section 8 tenants, if you do want to rent to Section 8 tenants, you are still going to be a problem for them, okay? They want total control of your business, and that's it, period. So before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like, subscribe button, maybe leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think. So, one of my suggestions to make more landlords accept Section 8 was actually to pay them higher than market rate rents. And apparently in Washington, D.C., or at least in the case in this article, that is exactly what is happening, okay? And now they have landlords such as this one who are receiving so much money for their units that they only want to rent to Section 8. So, I don't feel like there is a problem with it, obviously. But what do you think? Do you think that this is a problem? Do you think it's a problem if a landlord decides they only want to rent to Section 8? Do you think it's a good idea for, governments to pay more than the market rate rent in order to incentivize landlords to rent to Section 8 tenants? Go ahead and put a comment in the comment section down below, and let's get into this article. This article is coming from WashingtonCityPaper.com, and it says, AG Brian Schwab accuses Petra Management of gaming DC's housing voucher system. The AG says the company is taking advantage of the abnormally high rates the city pays landlords housing voucher tenants. Let's get into it. Most discrimination in DC's housing market occurs when a landlord tries to avoid renting an apartment to a poor person with a housing voucher. But a major property owner is orchestrating precisely the opposite sort of scheme, according to a new lawsuit from the district. Attorney General Brian Schwab's office is suing Petra Management Group and its CEO, Rashid Salem, over accusations the company worked to exclusively rent to voucher holders at 3 of its properties in order to benefit from the higher rates the city paid compared to the rest of the market. In the process, Schwab claims Petra illegally discriminated against prospective tenants who don't hold housing vouchers and skirted the city's rent control rules, as landlords aren't bound by rent caps if they lease apartments to people with vouchers. So that is the key right there, okay? Why would a landlord, rent their units at abnormally high rates to the city? Or what would incentivize them if they could charge the same amount of rent to market rate tenants? They can't. They are bound by rent control rules. So imagine you have a tenant over here. They're a market rate tenant. They don't have a voucher. And you can only accept, due to the rent control, $1,000 a month from that tenant, right? But the city over here on the other end, right, is paying for voucher holders $1,200 a month. You do the math, and it's pretty simple to see that, oh yeah, I'm gonna take the 1,200 before I take the 1,000. And on top of that, you have more of a guarantee that you're gonna get your money. So yes, you created this issue, and now you're blaming the landlord for wanting to maximize their profits, for participating in the program that you want them to participate in, and you are the ones paying that high amount. Like, don't be surprised if this isn't the only landlord who's doing it. This might be the most high profile, but the reason that they're going after this landlord is because they want to put a warning shot out to all the other landlords, which there's probably a ton of in the city that are doing the exact same thing. Like if I was stuck under rent control rules and I found a loophole, which this is, it's a loophole around those rent control rules, you're darn right that I would take advantage of it. So yeah, it's hard to sit here and blame the landlord when they created the problem, and this is basically the only way that they're going to be able to make a profit in a rent control building. So what's the alternative? Okay, they start renting to a bunch of non-rent control people, and then all of a sudden they can't pay their bills. So you've put them in a lose-lose situation. I think it would just be easier for them to, just pay whatever fines that the city has, and not admit guilt, and then put a few token non-rent control people in there just so that you don't get sued again. That's basically all that you could do at this point. Just enough so that they are off of your back and you're still able to make a profit. So that's probably what's going to happen. I hear a lot of these lawsuits, and that's the sort of thing that they're able to work out with the city. But let me continue. Petra is exploiting the district's affordable housing crisis for profit, lining its pockets by limiting housing options for tenants who don't have subsidies but still struggle to afford a home, said Beth Mellon, Assistant Deputy Attorney General and Senior Counsel for Housing Protection and Affordability. It is illegal in the district for landlords to discriminate against tenants based on their income, and Petra's elaborate scheme just further distorts a market that already puts rents out of reach for many. To me, it sounds like they're not discriminating based on income. If they are taking exclusively voucher holders, then they have a whole bunch of very low income people up in the place. Okay? I mean, that's what it sounds like to me. But not according to them. Like I said, you can't win in this situation when you're going against a bunch of bureaucrats who create stupid rules. You can't. That's why I say, hey, don't even waste your time investing in a place like Washington, D.C. The only thing it's going to give you is stress, okay? It's going to give you trouble because you thought, hey, I'm going to make so much money. And you know what? Maybe there are a lot of people. There are probably a bunch of people who made a ton of money in Washington, D.C. and places like it, right? And I'm not saying that it's not possible. But when I talk about the way I think, I'm looking at it from the perspective of a small mom and pop landlord. Maybe you've got one building. Maybe you got just a handful of buildings, okay? Handful of units, and you're trying to compete in a market where all of the odds are stacked against you. Well, you're the perfect person for my next piece of advice. Go elsewhere. Move out of that place, okay? There's multiple states, multiple jurisdictions nearby where the housing markets are more open, where you're more able to do what you want as a landlord. And I suggest that you invest in those places instead. But what do you think? Go ahead and put a comment in the comment section down below.